Good evening, everyone. We are having applied leadership in conservation, and this is going to be our last episode, um, but not definitely not the least. And I'm very happy to introduce our guest speakers tonight. We have Soletu Sitiki. She's my former colleague as well. We've been together for 2.5 years as of now. And the first time I met her, she's a legal practitioner to mention. I couldn't forget that. So Soletu is a tram for those who don't know Soletu. She is in my perspective, someone who reads a room before the interactions. So she knows how to talk to people. She needs just few minutes to know what to talk to different people. So that's Soletu. We also have Prof. Ainsley Van Royen. Prof has 26 years of experience in public and private policy planning and implementation. He has worked in different sectors, but what strikes the most is, for me, is the Parliament in Cape Town. So he worked there. And I'm very, very happy to have this to talk to us tonight. We have a topic on how best to learn the system and enter them and what you should look out for. So I'm going to be talking to both the speakers, but we're going to start with Soletu, who is going to give us her experience as a young legal practitioner, but also someone who has worked in different areas, including conservation. So you should expect to listen to her experience, but also you get a chance to ask her questions as someone whom you can learn from. After Soletu's talk, I'm going to engage with Prof. Ainsley on set questions. I'm going to be asking him different questions regarding the topic, but also you will have a chance to ask your question. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Soletu to give her presentation.
Thank you so much, Robert. As introduced, my name is Soletu Sidike, and I am currently serving as the chairperson for the Youth Advisory Council for Leadership for Conservation in Africa. And to be honest, I'm excited to talk to you about a crucial aspect of succeeding in a new environment, whether it's a job, school, or an organization. Basically, understanding the system that you're entering. As young leaders, it is essential for us to recognize that each system has its unique cultures, policies, and expectations. And by taking the time to research, observe, and learn, we can navigate these systems effectively and be able to make a positive impact. So I'm going to start by addressing a key element of understanding the system that you're entering, and I've titled it "The Importance of Understanding the System." So when you're entering a new system, we all know that it can be both exciting and also intimidating. And each system has its unique cultures, policies, and expectations. So, understanding these elements is crucial for your success within that system that you find yourself in. Like I've said, be it a job, be it school, or be it an organization, right? So, when you comprehend the system, you are better equipped to navigate the challenges, to build meaningful relationships, and contribute positively. So I'll also make an example with myself. I've just entered into a new system. I've just started a new job as of the 1st of this month. And I want to tell you this. It was quite exciting. Obviously, getting a new post is exciting, but also it's quite scary because you don't know what you're entering into. You don't know your colleagues and you don't know the system. Hence, now when you get into that system, you need to first familiarize yourself with the policies of the system that you're entering. And upon familiarizing yourself with the systems or the policies, then also be brave enough to inquire about the culture of the system that you're entering into, because it is going to be important for your comfortability and success within the system that you're entering into. And upon knowing these things, now you are able to too, as a person, find your standing within this organization that you find yourself in. Also, do ask your employer, do ask your supervisor, what exactly is expected of me in this organization? What is it that I need to meet? Because you also need to know what it is that you need to meet in that space in order for you to succeed. So now that you've understood the system, you can also be able to contribute in that system positively. Okay, now you understand the system. I also want to now tap onto the importance of research and preparation. So before entering the system, research is key. You need to look into the organization's missions. You need to know their values. You also need to understand their history. Because through that, you are able to understand the expectations and the roles that exist within that system that you're entering. And that is also going to help you in setting realistic goals and understanding what is required to succeed. A lot of people will say, ah, I'll just see when I get there. You need to take a proactive approach when you're entering into a new system. And you can do that by what? By researching this place that you're entering into. And that can significantly reduce the learning curve and also help you integrate more smoothly because you have a background understanding of the system that you're entering into. I also like to make an example with ShareScreen Africa. When I started with ShareScreen Africa, I had prior knowledge of what ShareScreen Africa was because I was a Youth Advisory Council member, but I didn't understand ShareScreen Africa in depth as to what really ShareScreen Africa is about. So before entering the system, I first did my research and I found out that ShareScreen Africa is a Pan-African conservation-based tutorial initiative to benefit conservation departments, agencies, and colleges, right? So upon understanding that, I also then wanted to know what is their aim with everything that this initiative that they have. What is their aim? What do they want to do? And I figured out that they wanted to freely share knowledge and broaden skill sets, right? And they also wanted to create a Pan-African conservation-based student program for learning and blending practical and career opportunities. So now I understood that, and upon understanding that, I was able to then integrate more smoothly into that system. Hence, it is important to research the system that you're about to enter into and prepare yourself emotionally, mentally, and most importantly, intellectually, because most spaces that we find ourselves in, they need intellect. They need you to have emotional intelligence. They need you to be able to discern. Now you've done your research and you've done your preparation and you feel more comfortable. You are now in the system, right? You're part of the system. Now there's a stage that you need to partake in, and I titled it Observing and Learning. Now that you're in the system, now what you need to do is you need to acknowledge that observation is a powerful tool. And you need to pay attention on now how your colleagues interact, the communication style that exists, and the unwritten rules. Because I'll tell you this, when you're entering a new system, not everything is written on the SOP. Not everything is in the policies. Some things are there and they are unwritten rules. So now you need to know these things so that you are also able to settle within the system that you find yourself in. And you can also learn from others' experiences and their success, because those things can provide valuable insights as to, okay, what is happening in the system. You also need to not hesitate to ask questions, because asking question is like a sign of engagement, also a desire to understand the system better. If now you're going to enter into a system and you're keeping to yourself, you're staying in a corner, during lunch you don't interact with anyone, to some people, they might interpret that behavior as you being hesitant, as you resisting the system that you're entering. Whereas if you ask questions to your managers, things like, so what do you guys do here during lunch? And they tell you, oh, this is what we do. Usually, like with us, with CAs, we're all candidationists. They will tell us, oh no, during lunch, we go buy cool drink, we do this, and they interact. And now you also need to bring yourself to that position to be able to interact with your colleagues, because you need to know what is the lingo, like the youth or the 2000 will call it the lingo. What's happening here? How are people talking to each other? And once you understand that, it is much easier for you to then settle and to feel more comfortable. Remember, entering a new system is also about bringing yourself to a point of comfortability, bringing yourself to a point of understanding. And once you understand the system, you can better, I don't want to say better equip yourself as to how to handle challenges, but I want to say you can be a better individual as to how now you progress within the system. Because when you enter a system, it's not just about you being part of it, it's also about you being able to contribute to in this system positively. Right. Okay. So now you understand the system better. You've done your observation, and you've learned through obviously interacting with your colleagues and learning communication style, and also being quite aware of those unwritten rules that exist in the system. Now you need to discover relationships. You need to build relationships. Building relationships within systems is vital. I cannot emphasize on this anymore, because these relationships that you build in your workspace, at school, in an organization, can provide you with support. And we all need support in a new system. They can also provide you with guidance and, most importantly, opportunities for growth. When you're entering a system, right, you need to build friendships. You need to have colleagues that you can rely on. You need to have colleagues that can help you, that can support you, colleagues that you can go to when you don't understand what is happening, when you need advice as to, okay, this is what I'm going through. Like with us as candid attorneys, we usually don't know whether which charge it is that our maybe the accused is being charged with, right? You don't know, is it a schedule 5, is it a schedule 6? Upon you building relationships with your colleagues, you are able to go and say, Johan, you know what, I see that there's a speaker that is supposed to discuss this and this and this and this and this. Unfortunately, I don't understand this topic, and I was just wondering if you can just brief me, so when I meet with the speaker, I am able to express what is our expectation as the organization, right? You are able to get support, and Johan, being your superior, is not going to be like, no, why do you want that? They're going to assist you, because it is not just for your benefit as an individual, but it is also for the benefit of the system that you are in. Let it be an organization, let it be school, or let it be a working space that you find yourself in, right? You also get opportunities to grow, and you only grow through being inquisitive. You grow through curiosity. You grow through understanding that you don't know anything. Nobody knows everything, and it is okay to not know, but it is not okay to not ask, so that you can be told as to what steps to take. Now that all of that you've done, you also need to be aware of networking within organization, because networking can open doors to new perspectives and also to collaboration. Hence, I'm gonna close on building relationship by saying this. You need to remember, strong relationships are built on trust. respect and communication. How you communicate with your colleagues is important. It is of essential value, and how you respect them. If Johan likes to be addressed as Mr. Kriya, address him as such. That's how he likes it. And that is also a form of acknowledgement from your end as a colleague, also to be interpreted as a form of respect. Be able to communicate with somebody in a manner that is respectful, in a manner that you'd also like to be treated in. And through that, you can be able to build trust. And through trust, strong relationships are built. Strong relationships are built through trust. Now I'm going to go to what I think is the most important part when you're entering a new system, which is adapting to change. Adapting to change is important because every system evolves over time. Hence, being adaptable and open to change becomes crucial, because in a company, there'll be new policies that are introduced, there'll be new technologies that are introduced. You can't now say, oh no, I was born in the 1960s, I don't know how to operate this thing or these touch phones. You need to keep up with the times. You need to be able to adapt to the new change. And when they introduce new policies, you need to become familiar with those policies. You need to have an understanding, because you don't want to find yourself in a position where you are in breach of something because you were resistant towards change. You don't want to find yourself in that position. And also, there's going to be shifts in culture. Remember, over time, companies and schools and organizations recruit new members. Sometimes there's going to be a new member in your company who is maybe not from South Africa, and you guys are a group of South Africans. That might be a shift in the culture, because now you need to learn to accommodate the new person that has come into the space. And embracing change can also help you stay relevant and, most importantly, effective within the system. Everything that you do when you're entering a new system, you need to make sure that it is to the effectiveness of the system, and most importantly, to your effectiveness within the system, because you need to be effective for the functioning of the system that you've entered into. And you also need to be flexible. Flexibility and a positive attitude towards change can make a significant difference in your success, and also in the success of the company, in the success of the school or the organization that you find yourself in. And I want to emphasize on the importance of being a seed. You know, when a seed is planted, it understands that, okay, I am being buried, but I am not just going to remain the same. I am going to come out, I am going to sprout out as maybe a beautiful rose, as maybe the most tallest tree. So you need to understand that through change comes sometimes great things. You need to have a positive attitude. You also need to have a chameleon mindset. You need to be able to camouflage. It is not all the time that you need to resist change. It is not all the time where you need to be resistant. Sometimes, for your benefit and for your growth and for the effectiveness of the system that you find yourself in, it is important to be able to camouflage, to be flexible, and most importantly, to have a positive attitude. Now you've adapted to change, I want to touch on another element, which is now contributing positively. Because as you become more comfortable within the system, you look for ways to contribute positively. This could be through like innovative ideas, volunteering for projects, and supporting your colleagues. And I know a lot of people who find themselves in new organizations. Sometimes you feel like, oh, now this person is using me. Why are they always asking me to file for them? Oh, why is this person always doing this? Why is this person always doing this? Sometimes in a new system, people ask you to do things to see if you are able to change dynamics, if you're able to do something else. So now, say for an example, when I worked at Abergold, I worked as an HR assistant. I worked as an HR assistant, and basically all I did was around HR related matters. But one day, a colleague of mine approached me and said, Soledu, we are trying to build a website and we want content for the website for this development trust that we have. So what can you do? Bear in mind, I don't know anything about developing a website. I didn't know anything about content creating, but I was open minded enough and listened to the brief that was given to me by my colleague. And upon listening, I was able to then say, okay, this is what I can do. These are the things that I can do. And now, when I supported my colleague through creating content for the website, I acquired new skills. This now came back and contributed to me because it added to my skill sets. And besides it adding to my skill set, we were able to collect content. We were able to advise the website people on what content and we need there and how we want it to look. And had I had been to her, oh no, I'm an HR assistant. I deal with people who are on AWOL. I deal with people who with discipline and so forth. I wouldn't have learned a new skill and I wouldn't have contributed positively towards the sustainability and the effectiveness of the system that I was in. Right? So positive contribution not only benefit the organization, but also enhance your reputation and satisfaction within the system. And I'm not to brag, but I can almost confidently tell you this through my positive attitude and through my willingness to assist and support and volunteering in any workspace that I find myself in. When I am to ask for a reference letter, I can ask for it from anyone because I was supportive towards my colleagues. Because I didn't look at it as them slacking on their job. Now they needed me to help them. But I looked at it as a way to help my colleague to alleviate the, the load that is on them. And most importantly, to help get things done within the specified time. So you also need to know that it is also satisfactory to know that this is there because I contributed to it. I know now the website is there because I contributed to it, because I invested my time in it. And it is there, and I'm happy, and I regard it as one of my products. So when you get into a new space, you need to look at it as your own thing. You need to give it the respect that it deserves and give it your all because it is not just going to contribute to you only, but it is also going to contribute to your system. And most importantly, it is going to have a great impact on your reputation. And you are going to be satisfied as a human being. But you know what? I have acquired this and this and this, and I've contributed in this and this and this. So before I close now, I'm going to speak on overcoming challenges. So I do want to say this. Challenges are inevitable in any system. So developing problem solving skills and resilience becomes essential. When you are faced with an obstacle, approach them with a solution orientated mindset. It is the only way you can overcome a challenge. You need to say, I acknowledge that this is a challenge. However, now your focus should be on how am I going to solve this problem? Because it does not help to dwell on the problem itself. You're just wasting time. And sometimes you are wasting company resources. So you need to either, if you don't know what to do with the problem and you cannot come up with the solution, be brave enough to seek advice, be it from your mentors, be it from the colleagues that have navigated similar challenges. Because you need to remember this overcoming challenges can lead to personal growth and professional growth. Right. Yeah. As I close, I just want to speak more on continuous improvement. So, finally, understanding the system you're entering is an ongoing process. This is something you need to know. When you're getting into a new system, you need to be aware that this is an ongoing process. For as long as you're within that system, you need to know that. That continuous improvement also involves regularly assessing your performance. Seek feedback. Ask people, what do you think of my performance? I had this case and this is what happened. And I don't think I got the judgment that I wanted. Ask your colleagues. Ask your colleagues to give you constructive feedback, because you are able to adapt to new developments within the system if people are open enough and there's an assessment that takes place that checks your performance, and you're able to keep up as to, okay, when I started here I could write under, now I am able to write understand. By the end of this, I will be able to write understand as a word in its own, right? So you can also do that by committing to growth and improvement. And you can maximize your potential and make a lasting impact within the organization. And in conclusion, I just want to say understanding the system you're entering is foundation to achieving success in any environment. And you can do this through being adaptable, through flexibility, through the skill of observation and learning, and most importantly, through continuous improvement and also a positive attitude. You also need to embrace strategies. That strategies will not only enhance your experience, but also contribute to your overall success in any organization. I think that's it, Robert. Thank you so much. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you so much, Soletu. That was would I call it an inspiring talk or an insightful and educative talk? I think I wanted to summarize it in the main points that you highlighted, of which I took notes of, and that's to say, what do you need, first of all, because when you're learning and understanding the organization or a system you're entering, first of all, you look at what you need, and that's familiarizing yourself with the system. That's what you talked about first. And then you taught us how do you do that? And it's just asking your employers or the supervisors on what you're expected of, which is really, really important. And thank you for highlighting that. And why do you do that? You're just setting the realistic goals. You don't want to set goals just you don't want to set an alien goal. You want to set a goal that's related to the endeavors of the organization. And how do you do that? Is you research on the nitty-gritties of the organization and learn the unwritten rules. I love that, the unwritten rules, because any institution, any organization has unwritten rules. And you do that by interacting with your colleagues and see how they carry themselves. And you also mentioned something really important, and that's adapting to change. Um, Adapting and embracing the change. Well, let's be honest with each other. I think everyone here, no one wants to be left behind. That's what I hope. You do not want to be left behind, and um, if that ever happens, then you are doomed. Something else is, you also mentioned about approaching challenges, and you approach a challenge with a positive mindset, and you want to be brave to ask questions where you lack knowledge. And finally, something really important you said is all this is an ongoing process. You want to have a continuous improvement, either personal improvement or even you leading your organization to an organization improvement. And you do that by continuously asking your colleagues questions and feedbacks. And I would like to ask Prof. Ainsley, first of all, Soleto, really thank you very much. That was an insightful and educative talk. I think most of my of the audience share the same thought with me and would be expecting some thoughts and questions. And I would like to ask Prof. Ainsley if he has anything to cement on what Soleto said, or want to emphasize, or even bring in a new thing to say something before I engage with him on some questions.
Thank you very much, Robert. Yes, look, Suleto, I must tell you that this was brilliant. Honestly speaking, I've been listening to you closely, and I must say that just a screen slide. Yeah, I must say that it looks as though you've actually thought these things through very, very well. Now, if one applies what you have suggested in your talk, I mean, it can only go well, you know, because it has to do with one's approach, it has to do with one's attitude, and it has to do with, in a way, as a young employee or as an entrant into the workforce, and even if you are not so fresh in the workforce, to understand that you have a place in the space, and you need to know what your place in the space is. There are ample um, opportunities for one to change a system or to influence a system and this and that and what. But the thing is, you need to understand where you are, who you are. And I think it came through very, very, very well in what you said in terms of one's attitude that one should have and one's approach that one should have. So, yeah, that would be the summation of or a reaction or a response to what you said. Robert, if you will or if you want to, we can proceed with the questions that you have actually um, to ask me, available to ask me.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. Ainsley. Um, Before we dive into our questions, for us young people, we call it giving flowers where they are due. So I would like to give Prof. Ainsley his flowers. We met last year in November, and I remember by the time I was really um, wrestling with my mind whether I should pursue my graduate studies or not, because at the time I had well, I was a fresh graduate and I didn't want anything to do with with education no more. But then I sat with him on a lunch, and my mind, after that lunch, my mind couldn't be any clearer. So I think for most of the audience who are going to listen to him tonight, be prepared to learn a thing or two about whatever he's going to talk about. Yes, he's going to talk about understanding the system you're entering, but I'm sure he's going to go further than that. And yeah, you also like to give him his flowers, I bet, after the talk. So I would like to dive into the questions, and to start with let's call it an icebreaker. You've worked in different organization, government, academia, and business. If you had to describe what all the systems have in common in just 3 words, or maybe less, what would they be? What the systems have in
Yeah,
common?
Robert, if I were to narrow it down to only three words, I could actually keep you busy with more, or for a whole week perhaps. But if I must narrow it down, I would say probably interconnected, adaptive, and political.
Mm.
So that is what a system brings you, and that is what a system's characteristics are. Now, let me do a bit of explaining here. So every system, whether it's a government department or a conservation NGO or a university or even where Suleto is working now, I'm sure the main basic characteristics remain the same. That is because it is made up of people, processes, and power. That's what it is, if you really strip it from all its veneer and all its painting. So these elements are deeply interconnected. They relate to each other, and you can't divorce the one from the other one. So they are interconnected in the sense that a change in one area often ripples through to the rest of the environment. Um, they call it in organization behavior and many other sciences and so forth. They talk about the knock-on effect. One action actually has a knock-on effect to a lesser or a greater extent, but it is there, irrespective of whether it's a big system or a small system or a big organization or a very, very basic organization. It doesn't matter. There is that knock-on effect. So it ripples through the rest. So systems are also, however, adaptive. And this is one thing one should really understand. It is adaptive, but you can't just jump in and change the system just like that. Again, you need to stay in your lane in a sense. If you're a junior employee, you need to first learn to read what is happening around you, learn to understand the politics. I think, Robert, you referred to it, and also Letu referred to it indirectly. You need to be able to get to know the unsaid things. It's not only about what is written in a document or a code of conduct or whatever the case may be. So that is a very important thing. So it has this knock-on effect. So they are adaptive. They evolve in response to internal pressures and external forces. And I'm not going to give you a lecture tonight on internal pressures and external forces. There are many models that we as organization behavior theorists use in terms of defining those, in terms of trying to understand what the system does and doesn't do and how it behaves and why it behaves like that, so that you can predict in future as far as in which direction the thing should be steered. I'm not going to go into that. I only want to mention that there are pressures and forces, and these are internal and external. And all those things contribute towards what the reality is at any given point in time in a system. Finally, if they are political, it's not necessarily in the partisan sense, but it is how decisions are made, who holds influence, and whose interests are prioritized. So if we use the word politics, we should try to not use it in the conventional, understanding of the word politics. Political as how an individual, for instance, a manager, decides to navigate his or her space, his or her place, his or her actions, and of course, his or her survival in a particular organizational setting. So what am I telling you? I'm telling you that interconnectedness and adaptiveness and political are three main themes, right, of a system. And if you want to survive the system, if you want to navigate the system, you first need to understand what these interconnectedness or what the interconnectedness of all activities and processes and procedures and behaviors would be, how you must adapt to it, and how you can actually adapt it at any given point in time, and understand the politics behind each and every decision taken by each and every person, including yourself. There is no such a person who can claim that he or she doesn't have an agenda in terms of how he or she takes a decision within, for instance, an organizational context. We are survivors. Well, let's say, let me put it differently. We try to survive. We attempt to survive. We do our best to survive. Hence, we take certain political, in inverted commas, decisions so that we can live another day in the organization. So it is a matter of who you befriend, what decision you take, in terms of its influence on another powerful person who may or may not, for instance, be beneficial to you, or further your career in some point, or whatever the case may be. Again, I don't want to go into the psychology and the behavioral issues relating to that too much, because time just doesn't allow. But believe me, that if you don't read the politics well, and if your politics are not or is not in sync with the political climate within your organization, you will find yourself extremely ostracized, or you will find yourself on the street very quickly. So, what am I saying again? Understand your environment, the issue of internal pressures and external forces, very importantly. So, by way of an example, in conclusion, in a conservation project, for instance, so in that context, if there's a shift in donor funding, which affects staffing, right, it impacts on community engagement, for instance. Take, for example, if you are dependent on donor funding that comes from the US, and all of a sudden, by a stroke of a pen, the funding gets cut. The tap is closed, one shot, just like that. The effect of that on the organization and your doing and how you react to that and so on, that is very, very important. And that is a case in point in South Africa, for instance. I'm not sure who's on the platform tonight, whether you are very conversant with the recent issues as it relates to donor funding being cut from the US and USAID and so forth. The effect of that, the knock-on effect, as I've mentioned earlier, it's great because there are interconnectedness aspects here. It's not only that you don't have money anymore for HIV/AIDS awareness creation, it impacts across the board in other arenas as well, because everything is interconnected. You need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to say, okay, this is it. While we're trying to save the ship on one side, we need to survive in the meantime. And then you need to understand the politics behind it and the reasons behind it and all those kinds of things. So be very vigilant. And then again, another one, and it's part of the same example in a way, when a new local leader is elected, priorities shift again. So it's not only a matter of donor funding that gets shifted. Now, all of a sudden, in terms of your target population or the beneficiaries, and there's a community issue and a community engagement matter, and all of a sudden, on top of all your troubles of not having money anymore, a new leader is elected, and you need to renegotiate terms of reference or service level agreements or whatever the case may be. And then again, priorities shift. Again, the system will take you, and it will take you in a direction, and you may find yourself totally adrift at sea if you are not conversant with the issue of interconnectedness, being able to adapt, and of course, reading the politics, and of course, um, moderating your own politics in the process. I don't want to go further than that because I'm going to keep you busy tonight. You know, I'm a lecturer. I have this disease. It's called talking.
I wish you could all have that disease in case we talk sense. It's a great disease to have, yeah. But yeah, I think from what you just said, if you're looking to understand how things are done in a certain system, then if you have the three things you said, which are interconnectedness, learning the process and being able to adapt to that process, and the politics behind everything, I think you'll be in a better position to carry out that system. And my other question is, Soletu talked about learning the unwritten rules while you work in a door of a certain organization, first thing first. And my question is, when you work into a new organization or a community, what's the very first thing you look out to understand for you to understand how things really work?
I think there's a, and for some of us, it's a bit difficult to do this, but I think there's a very, very wise piece of advice that I may share with you. And that is shut up and listen. What do I mean by that? I mean the following: listen to what is not being said, feel the temperature, observe, and get to know the unsaid and the cultural. When I say again cultural, I mean organizational culture, the atmosphere. That's what I mean with the temperature. So formal structures tell you what is supposed to happen. That's fair. That's fine. We have policy documents and we have processes and procedures and so forth. But that doesn't actually tell you what happens between the lines. So informal dynamics, who to trust, which people to trust, who they go to for advice, who gets things done quietly, things like that. Um, those are the kinds of things that teaches you how or reveals how things really work in this place. Pay attention to people's tone, their body language, who speaks when, who keeps quiet, when to speak and when not to speak. Um, Look out for cultural clues or cues. Don't think in the narrow sense of cultural. I mean cultural organization, anything in between as well. How people treat time, how people respect or disrespect hierarchy, how people deal with conflict. I, for instance, have a principle that I have taught myself to use. In fact, I never did it when I was much younger, but I actually realized later on that there are better ways of disagreeing, and that is not to disagree, for instance, with your boss in a meeting. Not good politics. If you have an issue and if it is a serious enough issue, and if you feel that it needs to be voiced and aired, then you kind of keep quiet when the time is inappropriate to raise the issue and to potentially create conflict. Um, Especially if you don't understand the dynamics to which you have now been exposed. Because remember, we're seeing this from the point of view of a person who is just young, entering into the workspace. You need to start understanding that there are these unwritten rules which they don't issue you with in a manual the moment you step through the door the first Monday morning. So those are the kinds of things that you need to really think of. So, for instance, that in any organization, let's say it's an NGO, let's assume there's a director. This person is officially in charge, but everyone defers to a senior ranger, for instance, it's a wildlife thing, who's been there for decades. There's a reason why that happens. There's a reason why that actually occurs. You need to understand why it gets done. You need to understand the unspoken dynamics in a situation like that, for instance. Do not for 1 minute think that the director of this organization is unaware of the fact that everyone kind of circumvents him or her and rather rely on the advice given by a junior but with experience, for instance, right? Um, you need to understand those kinds of things. So, first of all, I started off by saying, keep quiet, read the room, understand the sensitivities, understand that there are some unwritten ways of doing and not doing. And it has to do with social intelligence, it has to do with emotional intelligence. Um, And of course, operational intelligence is something that happens together with that, because operational intelligence is to know the systems and the processes and the procedures But the rest, those are the dangerous things that you shouldn't toy with, and that you should be very vigilant with in the process of applying your operational intelligence. I think I again, if there are any questions relating to this, you are welcome to later on engage with me on this matter, or anyone for that matter. Thanks. Next one,
Yeah.
Robert, perhaps.
Thank you so much. I think you mentioned shut up and listen, but I'll also say shut up and observe.
Mm, yeah.
Someone told me that the most eloquent and confident people in the room are not the smartest. So it
Mm,
makes sense a lot. And hearing something like that from someone like you makes it more clear. And
mm,
I would say we are privileged to have someone like you whom have been in our years that we are in as of now. Most of the audience are the students from TUT. And reason why I said we are privileged is because we can get the hard truth, even the uncomfortable experiences and situations you've been into. And my
mm,
question regarding that is, in your experience, um, have you ever misread or underestimate a system or how things are done? And if so, what did you learn from it, from that
mm.
experience?
Yeah. Before I answer that question, I think most of you on the platform tonight are probably too young to know who this person is. This person was called John Wayne. John Wayne used to be an American actor, and he always played in these cowboy movies. And but he was a very wise man in his own right as well. And he, I once read something which he said to people, and he said, you know what? You don't need to be the most talkative one and the loudest one and the what. And his motto in life was the following. He says, talk low. So don't talk with a hysterical voice, because then people think you're not in control of yourself. Talk low, talk slow, because if you talk too fast, then people think you're anxious and in a panic state. And he says, talk little, because if you talk too much, people stop listening. Talk low, talk slow, talk little. And that's something that one should teach oneself, especially if you are or you tend to be a bit verbose. But nevertheless, getting to that, your question here. Now, I've made many mistakes, um, and one of them, maybe, yeah, I could mention many, but perhaps one of them would be to say I assumed formal authority meant that it is, or that it carries real influence. And that's not necessarily the case. And I think it kind of refers back to my previous answer, or my answer to the previous question, where I said that the director is on paper is in charge, but the one who actually dishes out the advice, or who's approached for advice, would typically, not typically, would sometimes be just someone that you wouldn't expect. And it links with this one where I say, so early in my career, I tended to focus too much on titles and organizational charts. This person is the director, and that person is merely an assistant director, and therefore he or she knows less. But because why is he or she there in the on the organogram and not on top of the pecking order, that kind of thing. But one needs to understand life in a greater context as well. And I used to think that the person with the highest rank was the one driving the decisions. And let me tell you, it is not the truth. It's not the truth. Often you find that there are these other ones who sit in the corner who are just happy not being in the limelight, not being in the top position, not driving the biggest car with the biggest salary, but they are the ones quietly influencing. So I quickly learned that influence often lies with those who have built trust over time, long serving staff, respected elders, respected people who are on the verge of retirement, things like that, or even informal leaders. So you need to be careful not to attach too much value, on misreading your organogram. Misreading cost me a lot of time and credibility, in terms of the fact that I backed the wrong horse in a way, and I thought that the best advice would come from the more senior person, where that is sometimes not the case. Now, this is definitely a very difficult one to answer, because how are you to know? You are new, you are fresh, you've been taught all your life that you need to attach a lot of weight to what senior people tell you, which is true. Respect people who are in senior positions, which is true. But again, sit back, read the room, and then you decide who's really in charge, and then you actually follow on as far as that is concerned. So formal authority and a title, whether this person is called director, whether this person is called doctor or professor or this or that or what, it is merely a title. It doesn't mean that, in that title, a lot of wisdom is actually, in sort of hidden. It does not necessarily mean that. And you'll find that as you progress through your work life, you will realize that there are people who do not carry any titles, people who do not necessarily carry authority in the formal sense, but they are the ones who really, 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 they're the ones who steer the kite in the background. I would, for instance, also mention an example. So you mustn't assume stuff. For example, if you assume that in your organization, the chief financial officer makes all the financial decisions, I'll tell you today that for the most part, and this is a kind of a statement that I'm making, but for the most part, that is not necessarily the case. The person may carry the title of chief financial officer, but your operations manager, who's been in the office for years, who understands operations, and he understands, or she understands, the finances associated with driving operations and making the place work. I mean, obviously, because the person is the operations manager, he or she should really know. And if the place is working, and if it's a successful organization, you must assume that this person then has some insight there. So you will find that this person quietly influences certain budget allocations or certain decisions taken by the one who is officially in charge of that, by the way. So by focusing on only the financial space, you may miss key opportunities to learn and to contribute meaningfully later on in your own right. So yeah, understand that what appears to be isn't always the case, but at the very same time, do not disrespect authority, do not disrespect an organization diagram or a hierarchy, better word there, but understand that in between the lines there and in between the spaces, there are people who influence decisions in a very silent way. And I made the wrong assumption when I was young, and I had to learn that the dynamics is way different. An organization is an organism. It lives. It has a cellular structure. It has organs. It moves, and it has a quietness and a grace, and also an anger of its own, if you will. And you need to understand the whole organization as an organism. It can become sick. It can heal. It can die. It can grow. Lots of things. So yes, I think let me Let me end it there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If anything that I've got from what you just talked about is the fact that influence doesn't come with who is on the pecking order or the ranks, but it comes to those who has built trust over time. It really makes
Yeah,
sense, and
yeah, yeah.
I think that's my takeaway from what you just said.
Mm,
And as you went towards the end of your answer, you talked about disrespect and how things might get
mm,
frustrating and lead you to that. And I want to ask this question because, at least for myself, when systems feel frustrating or slow, I think I share the same feeling with most of the young people. Um, uh, I, during our conversations, some of them from different countries resent the local government and everything, saying things are slow, really frustrating. So my question is, when the systems are slow or frustrating at some level, um, what's your advice on staying patient, um, but also without losing your drive? Because as most
mm,
of young people has
mm,
that drive in themselves.
mm.
So what would you advise on doing um, while staying patient?
In a way, I've answered you, but maybe let me put it in words again. Let me express myself again. Um, your frustration with the system is either because you don't understand the system yet, or it is because you do understand the system and you instinctively know that it is wrong. But irrespective, be very careful that you are one individual, and you are a citizen of the system. And an individual citizen of a system doesn't change a system. You can become a martyr, but martyrs are often killed and hanged and thrown overboard. So, what are we saying? Be patient, because you must be able to, if you want to invoke change, if you want to facilitate change, you must wait until you truly understand and until the moment is ripe, or until you are in a position to actually influence this. And in the meantime, if you make too much noise, whilst it is evident that you don't necessarily understand, or whilst there is a chance, let's say there's a chance that you perhaps don't understand the system and your irritation stems from there, then you are going to definitely not be in a position to build trust. Then you're definitely not going to convince anyone to change, especially figures in authority, because no one likes change, especially ones who are in authority positions, because remember, the system looks after them. That's why they are in authority position or positions of authority. So you are rattling their cage there. You don't want that, because you're not going to survive this. You know, you may here and there win a battle, but the war you're not going to win. So teach yourself patience. Teach yourself to learn. And then when the time is ready, and if you're still around and you haven't decided to to jump ship or to go elsewhere, your time will come and you will be able to speak, but speak with wisdom. I think just patience. Patience is the ability to wait. That is basically what it is. And whether it is in your personal life or whether it is in an organizational kind of setup, irrespective, whether you're sitting in traffic, patience, because screaming at people and yelling and hooting and road rage and things like that, you are not going to achieve anything. I think that's basically the story there.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking of young people, this is my last question, and I would like to ask the audience to start sharing their question in the chat box or even raise their virtual hands. Think about young people. If you could be 22 years again, if let's say certain superpower comes and you're back to your 22 years old, what would be one sentence of advice before entering the professional world? What would that be?
This is an interesting one. If I could be 20, how old you say? 22, 21, 20 what?
Let's say 19.
All right. Yes. I will worry less. I will date more girls. I will enjoy my life in terms of enrichment. I would pursue more hobbies and more interests, and I will make a point of enjoying whatever the present brings to a greater extent. A kind of a personal thing from my side. So I was quite young when I decided that I wanted to do a doctorate, for instance, and then I set my sights on it, and I did it. I actually finished my doctorate when I was 26. Um, and everyone said, wow. And I felt good for a moment. And then as I grew older, I realized a couple of things that if I had waited to mature more, if I had maybe been less focused on this one objective and maybe spread my wings a bit more, I might have actually later on in life had the opportunity of becoming a better human being, but with a doctorate. You understand what I'm saying? So I think a very important point is don't only chase titles or certain individual things that you pursue and then you neglect the rest of your life, because you will be 22 years old only once. You'll be 23
Mm.
only once. And when you are 60, you can't do the stuff that you missed out on when you were 22 because you're too old. You're going to kill yourself. So if you want to go and you know climb the Himalayas, do it when you're 22. Your doctorate can wait. Um, but you can't do your doctorate and climb the Himalayas when you are 60. Although I must say in the news, I don't know whom of you follow the news so closely, there is an old Japanese man who, now I stand to be corrected, who climbed Mount Fuji, which is a very high mountain in Japan. I've had the privilege of having been there many years ago, and he was, I believe, he was just close to 100 years old. So, as much as I'm telling you that you need to do the right thing at the right time, nothing is impossible. But I think the principle I'm trying to share with you is that um, don't don't chase certain things, and then later on in life you discover that you've neglected things that you should have also taken care of. Whether it is
Mm.
personal relationships, whether it is physical activities, whether it's other enrichment pursuits. Um, just have balance. Just have
Mm.
balance. I think that would be my advice in this way.
Mm. Thank you a lot. And when you talked about the age thing of an old man of 100 years who climbed
Mm,
Mount Fiji, I remembered an analogy that someone gave me. That let's say let let me make myself old a bit, and let's say I'm 55 years old. And
mm,
if I'm considering myself as a company, and if a company is losing 55% of its income, it's not it's not a good thing to
mm,
think of. And
mm.
the CEOs and the employees of the company would be worried. So taking ourselves into that consideration, I think, would give us another perspective of living our lives, and it would help us a bit more. And
That's true. That's true. No.
yeah,
No,
while
I think
we
that's
wait,
true. Go ahead.
I was going to say while we wait for the questions, I saw uh, Prof. Prof. Ogilvy comment in the chat box. I would like her to unmute herself and voice that if that's okay with her.
Hi, Robert. Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Prof. Van Rooyen, thank you very much for tonight. What I love is that you spoke from the heart and also from experience. Yeah, I'm close to 60.
Ah, there you go. Which mountain are you going to take?
Yes, but all I can say is thank you. You know what? We all got to listen to ourselves. We also got to understand who we are and where we come from. And we have got the youth at the tip of our fingertips. And our actions can make a difference, or it can actually break a person. So you need to understand from where, and I'm just talking from the heart, from where you come from, and also where, for instance, where my students come from. Tonight there's 40 odd students or 30 odd students in the on live. And I would really like to hear, I've just got back from a 8-day excursion in the bush, and we kind of touched on this. And I firmly believe one should understand, listen to understand, and understand before speaking.
Yeah.
And we tend to forget that.
Mm.
We tend to forget from whence these students come from, but they've got a long learning curve ahead. They need experience. They need to understand that they've got a long, long climb ahead of them. And in order to do that, they've got to listen and learn from people who have got a lot of experience. And I
Mm.
tend to agree with you. There's also people who think they've got a lot of experience.
Mm.
And this is where the road can become rocky.
Yep.
And it can actually, as I said, break a student, can break a person. So guidance is important, but you've got to have knowledge in order to guide, in order
Mm.
to give advice. And you also got to have a heart behind that. And I firmly believe in head, hand, and heart, the three H's, and in
Yeah.
not in that order. I believe in heart, head, and hands. So you need to actually put your heart into something, and you need to understand. And you need to get to know who that person is standing right in front of you. And if you don't have the necessary knowledge, keep quiet.
Mm.
Send them to that person who does have that necessary knowledge. In order, that's the proper leadership. We don't know everything. We don't know everything. Yes, I've got my PhD behind me, which was a nightmare. It was
Yes.
a nightmare. And I would never say to a student, do not undertake that, because I believe in growth. I believe in finding out who you are and push yourself to a level that you're comfortable with. Because take baby steps. And if you take baby steps and they're smaller than the person in front of you, that's fine. You're still going to reach your objective at the end. But at your pace. Your
Mm-hmm.
pace is important. It doesn't matter if that person is running past you. Just be you and believe, and those special words that I tell my students, I can do it.
Mm.
You can do it. But I personally don't believe in the letter T in the alphabet. That can't,
Mm.
okay, won't.
Yes.
A lot of students don't believe in themselves, and they don't understand. Let's try and push a little bit to get to that next bridge where I can start walking over it. You don't have to run over it, walk over it. If you need to crawl over it, crawl over it. But my students who are listening, you know me very well. I speak from the heart. And I do believe in every one of my students. And I do believe they're going to get there at their pace.
Yeah.
Um, you may be my age one day and get your PhD. It doesn't matter. Just be happy with who you are. Do it the honest way. And never ever deviate from your dreams. Set your goals.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether they're baby goals, short-term goals, take one goal at a time, but you know where you want to go,
Yeah.
and set it. But that's just my 10 cents.
Mm.
But thank you, Professor Van Rooyen. And Soleto, I'm very proud of you, young lady. You spoke so well tonight. You spoke from your heart, and I loved it. I listened to it. And all what I can say, you're going to go far.
Yeah.
And just believe in yourself. And my students, believe in yourself. You know where I come from, okay? But Professor Van Rooyen, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Whom of you drink whiskey? Johnny Walker, by the way. If you
Not
read
me.
the
I like
label,
red wine.
if you read the label on the bottle, it says keep on walking. And that is something that I share with my students always. Just as long as you don't stand still, just as long as you don't regress, just keep on walking. You don't need to run. Just keep on walking. You'll get there.
And believe in yourself.
Absolutely.
And I always say choose your friends wisely, because
Yes.
sometimes your friends want to derail you because you're doing better than them.
Oh,
So
yes.
so
Mm.
just choose your friends very wisely. And remember, it doesn't matter. You can go out and have that one beer, but know your limits. Just know who you are and keep on track. All right. Reach for those dreams. And I always say to my students, I said, a short pencil is better than a long memory.
Yes, that's beautiful. Can I borrow that one?
And also, there is a thing called a erasure. So you are going to make mistakes in life.
Yeah,
Rub it out. Start again.
yeah,
And it doesn't mean failure. It just means you're learning from your mistakes.
that's right.
So I do love my students. I love my students a hell of a lot. And I back them wherever they go. And I'm very proud of my students. And they know it.
Mm.
But thank you, Prof. You made my night. And Soletu, love you, girl. I really am proud of you.
Thanks for the accolades, Prof. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just a doctor, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Well,
Dr.
I've
O.
promoted you now. I've promoted you. Go check with HR
Well,
tomorrow. Okay.
you deserve it, Professor. And yeah, from what you just said, I think being not ashamed of trying baby steps is the key. We tend to want to look cool, sophisticated, and able of everything, but then um going back to the drawing board and using the baby steps helps a lot. Thank you for mentioning that. And one last question. We are towards the end of our event tonight. For both of our speakers, Soleto and Prof, I'm sorry to put you on spot, but I've got my notes, and I'm sure everyone in the audience got their notes. If you could have one key takeaway for everyone in the room tonight, what would that be? One or two sentences.
So, Letu, you go first.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. Edson. I think one or two takeaways from the today's talk would be that it is important to always be in a position to adapt. Always know that in any situation, in any system that you find yourself in, if there's anything that you need to be able to do, is to adapt. Because not only will that assist you in moving forward with the organization, with its new plans and new systems introduced in place, but that will also help you to just enjoy and be part of a system that is ongoing. So it is important for you to not be so resistant. Always be flexible, always be open minded. Most importantly, be able to adapt to change because it is great. It is not only for the benefit of the organization, but it is also for the benefit of your growth as an individual within that sphere. And sometimes change in organization usually comes with new skill sets. So it's not just going to be for the benefit of the organization, but it is also going to assist you in equipping yourself with new knowledge, with new skill set. So to cover all of this, I'm just going to say always be in a position to be a chameleon and be able to adapt to new change. And that's all from my side, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Soletu. Can we hear from Dr. Ogilvy before Prof. Ainsley? Please.
I
Doctor.
love that. Soletu, I love that. Don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid of the challenge. Sometimes we put a challenge up. Um, Sometimes you challenge yourself and you feel like you failed. No, you haven't. Accept the change and never be scared of it. But also, don't challenge people. Don't challenge the person sitting next to you because sometimes it could be seen as a threat.
Mm.
And when you speak, know how to speak. Watch your tone. Sometimes you get excited and it comes across as aggressive, or it comes across as something else. And meantime, you don't mean that. It's just the way you are. So
Mm.
look at your own self and grow from within, and make that difference. So don't be scared of that change. And you said a chameleon. Just be careful of the colors of a chameleon. Sometimes they change. All right. So yeah, um, become a bird, guys. Get your wings, fly. Don't let somebody clip them. All right, because you won't ever get off the ground. You need to fly a little bit, but sometimes you need to land and recoup and ask questions. There's nothing wrong with a question. I love questions. And just remember who you are.
Better. I think Prof. Ainsley has something to as a takeaway and would like to hear that.
Thanks, Robert. Perhaps, two small things. First of all, you are going to make mistakes. Life is short, but life is long. There's a lot of time. There's a long time to make many mistakes. Um, but life is too short. And let me give you a kind of an example here, or use an analogy, or I don't know what it is. So if you've discovered that you've entered through the wrong door, acknowledge that and exit if you feel and realize you don't belong there, because you can always turn around and get out. Don't don't remain in the room after you've discovered that you've entered through the wrong door, because then life is going to become one eternal nightmare. So if you've made a mistake, acknowledge it, get out, live to tell the tale, live for another day. If you have taken up an opportunity or employment in an organization where your gut tells you that I should not be here, do some introspection, get out. If you find that, or if you believe that there's some utility in you being in that place, you can learn something, irrespective of whether it probably is not a very nice place to be in at that point in time. Your decision. But don't just be in a place where your all your senses tell you that this was a mistake. because life is short, but life is long. And then the very last thing is, and I'm going to talk low and talk slow and not talk a lot. You do you the best. You understand what I'm saying? Don't try to do what other people did. Don't try to measure yourself against other people. Don't try to become other people. You do you the best. So just be you. Thank you, Robert, and everybody.
What a better way to end it. You do you the best. Think the best person you love is yourself. So doing you the best is the best way to go. And thank you everyone who has been here. It's a pleasure having you all. This was the last episode of Applied Leadership in Conservation. We thank you very much for being part of this. Thank you so much, Dr. Ogilvie, for bringing your students along. And we look forward to having as more informative and educative series in future as possible. And whenever you have anything to ask or you want to learn something in conservation field, then you can visit our website, sharescreenafrica.org, or even visit our social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook. You can find us there. So thank you again for being part of this. We look forward to having you in future as we look into bringing new series. And yeah, that's the end of the night. May you have a great night wherever you are. See you. Ciao, ciao.